Hey everyone, this is Greg Robinson with Terminal 2W. I'd like to talk to you today about Southwest Airlines and give you a brief look at what's coming up in the near future with our videos. First, Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines is an airline that has had a few value propositions over the year that have been founded on some real basic items about airline business. So first up, number one, low cost. That's something that carried Southwest Airlines for more than 40 years. And today, that doesn't really exist. They're a competitive airline. They're not a low cost airline. Two, the democratic service that they offered. Everybody had an equal chance at seats. It really was on a first come, first served basis. And strangely, a lot of people like that. The egalitarian nature of it all did appeal even to businessmen at times. That's no longer going to be around either. And it really hasn't been around for a while, since you can buy priority boarding from Southwest for a few dollars and get an A listing and a virtual guarantee of an aisle or a window seat. Third, operational efficiency. This is an airline that figured out how to turn around a 737 in 15 to 20 minutes. And today they turn around their aircraft no better than most other airlines. And in some cases, I would argue they're maybe not as good. Their operational efficiency in some respects is now inhibited by the fact that they're a Boeing only airline. And as an airline that owns in excess of 800 aircraft, all Boeing, all 737s, they don't really have as much operational flexibility to make things work for themselves. While it's true they have some Boeing 700 and Boeing 800 aircraft, I would argue that they need some 900 or MAX 10 aircraft on many of the routes. And I would also argue that they need some smaller aircraft to develop more feeder traffic, if you will. Remember, they're the only airline around in the big four of the United States that doesn't have a feeder airline working with it. And then next up, their cost containments. That's an airline that has always been able to hedge themselves against fuel costs, do more with less and the rest, but they have become such a big airline that that's no longer to their advantage. In fact, it's holding them back from being a more successful airline going forward. So what's going to happen to Southwest, particularly with the announcements that they've made, particularly around no longer having free luggage on their flights, and frankly, a more premium service available? I wouldn't call it first class, but they're definitely going for that more JetBlue experience. I don't think these are going to make any difference in Southwest Airlines. At the end of the day, they're going to have, in my opinion, the same problem that JetBlue has, and that is this. The big full-service airlines have figured out how to compete against them. They have scraped away a lot of their traffic with benefits such as frequent flyer clubs that extend across multiple airlines. In addition to lounge access for business travelers, and business travelers are the most frequent travelers, and a certain amount of boarding convenience that comes with those airlines that you don't get on Southwest Airlines, or for that matter, in many respects, JetBlue. And then from underneath, they've been scraped away by the ultra low cost carriers like Spirit, Allegiant, and Frontier. With pressure on both sides, Southwest Airlines is facing an identity crisis, and they're going to have to figure out who they want to be. And the leadership that's carrying them through this, I think, has a really big uphill battle. It doesn't mean that Southwest is going to go away, but I think there's less and less reason to fly Southwest. And I think bigger changes are really in order for that airline to truly succeed for the next 40 or 50 years. We'll see how they do. Now, a quick look at what's coming up. We have a new video coming out tomorrow. That's part one of a trip from Dallas-Fort Worth to Seattle. And this is the trip up there. Some good insights on what the travel was like. The seasons are changing. And believe it or not, I got scolded on an airplane. And we'll talk about that a little bit in this video, but we'll talk much more by the end of the series. And also coming up is a look at some Seattle activities around art. There will be a special dedicated video to seeing the Boeing Museum of Flight, and then there'll be a return trip. In addition to that, in the month of April, we have trips going up to Boston. So there'll be a trip up to Boston. There'll be a Boston commuter flight on Boutique Air that we'll do a video on. There'll be a train trip from Boston to Washington, D.C., and then from Washington, D.C., there'll be another trip back to Dallas-Fort Worth. We're doing a back-to-back comparison on American Airlines and Delta from here to Atlanta. My daughter's going to be joining me on that flight, and it should be an interesting series of videos to do a back-to-back comparison on effectively the same route, same kinds of aircraft, under the same kinds of conditions. So we'll try and visit lounges, we'll do first class seats, and we'll see what else we can find to show the pros and cons of both airlines. And my daughter should be able to give a perspective of a younger traveler. And then in addition to that, we've got a trip to New Orleans coming up. That's really about flying down there, having some music, seeing what New Orleans has to offer right now, and then returning on Southwest Airlines through Houston. And the only reason I'm taking that trip is because I do these videos. And that may say something today about Southwest Airlines and where they fit into that competitive arena that they're forced into at this point. And then coming a few months from now, there will be a trip to Ireland, a ferry trip over to France, a video likely on the Le Mans race, because that's where I'm going to spend a few days in my June. And then there'll be a train trip back to Paris on a high-speed train. And then we'll be flying Icelandair from Paris to Keflavik to Washington, D.C., and then from Washington, D.C. back to Dallas. So a lot of trips in that. And more is in the planning already. So if you like these videos, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thanks so much for watching us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video. Bye.